Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth, and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And on the way to the studio, Alyssa Diggs. She better get here before it's over, but we don't wait for anybody.
No, we don't.
Alyssa, get your Cadittelhofer in gear, and otherwise you're going to miss the boat. And I hope she doesn't, because she did a homework assignment. She watched St. Elmo's Fire. She's a young 20-something that I'm going to be very curious on her take.
I'm going to be honest with you. She said she was going to watch St. Elmo's Fire. I have no proof she actually did.
Oh, she might have done the Alan version, watched the trailer, and infer everything else.
And then read a Wikipedia article.
Well, I hope she did, because it sounded like one of the things we were going to get is her take. We grew up in the 80s, and I'm an unapologetic lover of the 80s.
Big
and
nerd.
So anytime we can talk about it, I'm happy to. But Alan, he's sort of indifferent. You know, he's got bits and pieces that he likes.
Alan was in his 60s in the 80s.
Although, Max, you appreciate many things about the 80s goth music.
Well, that's because I kind of grew up with someone who was, let's just say, helped me become classically trained.
Yeah, so Allie, get over here. We really want to talk about it.
That is true. Max's parents are our contemporaries, so it's
exactly.
insane.
So, but Brandon, oh boy, fine. These days, whenever anything new is announced or anything new drops, in the old days, I would have just turned cartwheels the minute I heard about it. These days, I'm more street hardened and battle worn, so I take everything with a grain of salt. But when they announced the Cape Crusader, well, when they announced the Cape Crusader and they said it's going to be more Batman the animated series than the actual animated series, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty high bar to mention. But we saw the trailer, and man, it looks good.
So it
looks really good.
It is very Batman noir. It is seriously, we always had that wonderful classic, like 30s and 40s aesthetic in Batman the Animated Series.
Yep.
But from what I understand, this one is actually set in the time period.
That's what's interesting, because he's got the, and if you ever see the original Batman, folks, if you never looked at the old comics, he had purple gloves. He carried a gun. Now, he's not going to do that here or anything, I don't think, but he had those funny ears that went out, but they made it look cool.
Yeah,
it looks
really awesome. I'm excited for their off-the-wall take on Harley Quinn. There's a creep factor behind Two-Face that I think has been missing since those old classic comics.
It's a totally new look on Two-Face.
Yeah, it's very well. I mean, the character has always been kind of he's always been corny and kind of goofy with his. This one seems very hardened, kind of like how you are about new media.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always thought, because I've got some great comics that have Two-Face. There's a really good one that goes in-depth into his psychology and everything. And he is a fascinating character if handled right. So, I mean, he's always had a lot of potential.
Well, and I think I'm agree with Brandon. I think we've Vegased him a little bit with the coin toss.
Yeah.
When in reality, your very life is hanging on the line, and he is not going to deviate from the random choice of that coin.
He's really not.
And that is terrifying.
And so many people now, I mean, and I'm not trying to bash Bat writers at all, because to have the responsibility of writing a good Batman book has got to be a tremendous weight put on you. You're not going to find some guy who goes, yep, I can write the greatest Batman story, and then continue to think that 2 issues in.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of the writers these days tend to rely on the rogue's crutch, basically. It's like, what do we know about Two-Face? He's got kind of a split personality. He needs a coin to make a decision. No, there's so much more involved in that. And, it's 90% of these people want to use the Joker. They couldn't write a joke to get out of a wet paper bag. I'm sorry. It's just true.
Well, the other thing you learn about Two-Face, if you read the comics or if you just really just analyze his psychology, is the fact that the guy's always had these issues.
Right.
It's when he gets scarred, he just go ahead. He lets them manifest, and
it's like
all guards. All his guards are down. So.
The traumatic event unleashes it on everyone else. He's fought with it his entire life, but it's that moment.
But this, I would almost say, is a realistic version of Two-Face because he's scarred, but it's not like his face is burned out. Because let's face it, a person would die if you were that horribly scarred and you have your brain tissue almost hanging. But this is actually a realistic portrayal. But Brandon, who is the villain that's starting the fires? Is his name? What is that guy? I thought he was the most interesting
Firefly?
one.
It looks like Firefly. Which is
creepy.
the character that Brendan Fraser was going to play in the Batgirl movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this guy looks interesting.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's got a very clean look. It looks like the 30s, and the 30s is a very interesting time period anyway. That's where we get all the noir stuff. That's where people were thinking about futuristic inventions and things like that. And but the aesthetic is awesome.
I think we're going to get a lot of that. If you guys have ever been interested in the lore behind the World's Fair, if not the World's Fair itself, but the stories that have been told based around the World's Fair, like Devil in the White City, things like that.
Right.
When you get to see those certain areas where they talk about the innovative spirit of America, and it's not just America. There were people from all over the world who would attend this, but I think that era, because that's also where we're about to have the deviation between the regular timeline and the steampunk timeline, stuff like that. And it's just, there's just something special about things that are set in that era. And if you do it right, you can capture an audience's, their imagination, and just, you've got them hooked.
Well, think about what a boiling pot Gotham City would be in the 30s. You have the Depression, so you have economic struggles. You have all the stuff going on in Europe with all the the national tensions. You have just inventions being brought. There's a lot of interesting dynamics at play.
And it is the era of every great gangster.
There you go.
True.
Yeah, because at its best, Batman stories are crime noir and kind of a horror story, actually.
Yeah.
And no Robin is in this one, which I like.
If you're going to make a buddy show, make a buddy show. If you're going to explore the moodiness of somebody, taking this route,
there's really no room for a 12-year-old tagging along.
It's not a buddy show.
No, but it's looking good. We'll have a few parting thoughts, and then we're going to jump into our discussion about the 1980s.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Drop the racing form and step away from the TARDIS. The Geek Patrol is back.
Sort of appropriate, Max. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth and Alyssa Diggs. She made it here.
I did.
And our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we were touching on we're just very excited about the new Amazon series that's coming out, The Cape Crusader. I don't know how many episodes, Brandon, but the good news is there's not long to wait. It's coming out August 1st. So it looks great. We're Brandon, you said it in our text the other day. You said you were cautiously optimistic. You're no longer cautious. So
I feel you with what you were saying about wanting to be street and hardened and kind of cynical about to modern media at this point, where we used to just go, yes, this is amazing. But yeah, when your home studio drops you and you have to be licensed out to someone else, you get a little leery about it.
Well, Warner Brothers is a
well, it's a dumpster fire.
Right.
That's the easiest way to put it.
But I trust what you call Bruce Timm's. I trust Bruce Timm's visuals, although this isn't quite.
I trust his visuals. I don't trust his storytelling anymore. Remember, he's the one who gave us that intro to The Killing Joke, where he decided to have Batman and Batgirl have an affair.
That's right.
But I do trust Matt Reeves.
And
I trust J.J. Abrams enough to throw money at something as long as he doesn't have any creative control.
Yeah, I don't care what J.J. Abrams have to say about anything, but check it out August 1st, and we're going to be following this project with great interest. But Allie, you had a homework assignment, and you stuck to your duty. You watched St. Elmo's Fire.
I did.
Okay, well, we all have thoughts, but we want to hear your thoughts. You're a young 20-something. This is not your era, but...
No, but it was cute. I liked it a lot. I felt aesthetically it was quite cozy. I liked the music throughout. I thought it was cool. And then story-wise, I felt it was quite timeless. It felt still relatable to me as a 20-something in the modern day.
Right.
It's like, this feels like a friend group that I would interact with. This feels like our trials and tribulations as young people.
I like that you used the word cozy because there is a very cozy vibe about St. Elmo's Fire.
It feels like a movie that I will enjoy watching again in the fall months, with like a little cocoa.
But what do you think of the theme? Okay, now let's just say that they all had pretty good jobs jumping out of right out of college, except with Rob Lowe's character.
Yeah, I was like, except for
they were career people at 22. I don't know how realistic that was.
Less, yeah.
You were maybe an intern back in the at that point, but although this was the 80s and things were happening like that, but
well, I mean, this I mean no harm in using this term. The yuppie lifestyle, that they were
right.
Hollywood was pushing at that time. Yeah, it's like by the time you got out of college, you have your career set and everything's going to be amazing.
The American dream.
And it doesn't matter how much it costs to bury your mom.
Yeah.
To me, the most unrealistic part of St. Elmo's Fire were those awesome apartments they had. Because I'm like, okay, this is Washington. This would have been expensive, right?
Oh yeah, seriously.
That part was a little bit, but
well, I mean, it's the great thing about the 80s was what did they call that? Where it's like if you found an apartment that someone was willing to give up, you could get basically grandfathered in with that rent control.
Oh, rent control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but Allie,
how many people subletted their apartment to subletters to subletters to subletters? By the time you came down, it was like 14 people in before somebody actually realized, wait a second, you're not supposed to live here.
Right. Yeah. But Alyssa, I'm sorry. The themes of friendship are what resonated with me. I didn't really, because I saw St. Elmo's Fire when it came out, and I think at that point, I was like 1 year out of high school, so it was a little different for me. But the themes of friendship, because not all of them stay friends. Well, the friendships suffer. They struggle, right?
Yeah.
I thought they captured that emotion pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think I think throughout they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, and what's really funny is having watched Bratz, knowing that that's the movie that led, and the interviews and everything came out of that movie that led to that group of actors to not work together anymore. It made, life imitating art, imitating life.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
I don't know. And the only thing is that main song is so goofy. I like the music. I like the instrumentals.
You have an issue with Man in Motion. I'm taking your 80s card.
I always thought it was a stupid song.
That's right. I've got to remember, if it wasn't dark goth and made you think of Sandman, it wasn't a song for Joe back in the 80s.
I don't know. But the dialogue, I'm sorry, some of the things Rob Lowe said was pretty stupid. I mean, they did not give him the best dialogue to work with. So
This face seats 5. That was the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Wait, the what?
I'm using that all the time.
I'm going to New York. If anyone's fool enough to let me play my saxophone, I was just like, oh, come on. What 22-year-old is talking that way?
Rob Lowe.
You'd be surprised.
Rob Lowe.
That was a little hokey.
All right, well, here's the basic idea. We have certain movies that hang in there. And often they're not great movies.
No, but
Star Wars is not a great movie.
It's really not.
It's a great story, but it's
so
not a great
cheesy.
movie. St. Elmo's Fire. And Allie, converted from being a young lady to Alyssa, a now grown young lady.
Right.
There's a change. So you made a change in name.
Yeah.
You've made a change in hair color,
Yeah.
body decoration. You're growing into a different person.
You're
Yeah.
becoming
guess
who
what?
you are.
Yeah.
Every 10 years, you're going to be a new person.
It's true.
So the TV show 30-something, which will also
I
be
love that
40
show.
years old.
I'm sorry. That
Before
show
much
is
longer.
great. I love that show.
Is meaningless to you now, but 10 years from now, certain shows to me are not funny.
Yeah.
I don't think there are certain TV cartoons that are funny because I lived there. I knew everybody in the show. They're not funny to me. They're funny to everybody around me.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead was a docudrama for my generation. it was not a comedy.
My dad says the same thing about the Goonies, where as like a child he thought that was so fun, but then as a parent he was like, "What are these children doing?
Where are your parents?
going
Oh my
on?"
God! And who gave this small Asian child explosives?
But that's one of the great thing about there was a formula in 80s movies especially, and you see it still nowadays, but it's not as strong, where those movies resonate with you, and that's why they seem timeless, is that there's always something that the next generation can identify with.
Yeah.
You teed it up perfectly, Brandon, because that's what I wanted to talk about when we come back. It's what they focused on in the 80s movies that make them hold up. Not necessarily their technical brilliance or their dialogue, but they are timeless. And we're going to talk about when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Let the heat flow through you.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Alan Gilbreth and Alyssa Diggs and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, boy, I've been rubbing my hands together because we're talking about some of my one of my favorite topics, which is the 1980s. And 80s movies in particular. What started this is, of course, we all watched the documentary Bratz that Andrew McCarthy put out. It's all over Hulu. It's all over the internet. Everybody's talking about it. But it's also a perfect time to talk about movies. Well, the one that comes to mind is, of course, St. Elmo's Fire. You watched St. Elmo's Fire, Alyssa. We got your take on that. But I wanted to say something because Brandon teed it up perfectly. If you rewatch some of these movies from the 80s, they are not technically brilliant. They even are a little hokey. They might even have some terrible dialogue, but they still hold up. I'm thinking of The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The reason I'm connecting those is because they deal with interpersonal relationships. They deal with friendships, and the emotions hold up today.
You're only using Ferris Bueller because it takes place in Chicago.
I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's a good movie.
If you watch it, you're like, okay, if you're really going to analyze it, you're like, Brandon, okay, why is a school bus taking kids home and it's 6 o'clock at night? Well, there's a million holes in the plot of Ferris Bueller's,
I'm going to go ahead and say that you, my friend, have never enjoyed the Universal Transit from a Memphis City school to home.
No.
Because
that late, you're getting home at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
I don't buy that. Okay, well, I didn't want to get bogged down.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, it's like, sometimes when you have a certain amount of people come in and they've been bused from all this over the city, you may not get home till 6 o'clock.
Okay,
I was so glad when I could start walking home.
That was a true horrible thing at that time.
Well, what I mainly was interested in, though, is, Alyssa, have you ever watched The Breakfast Club?
I did. I have seen that one.
If you watch it, it had been years since I watched it, and then about a year ago I watched it, and I was like, okay, boy, Bender is a jerk, man.
Yes.
He's harsh. Also, some of it, I'm like, you probably could have trimmed about 20 minutes out of this movie, but it's one of those rite of passage movies. Like when you're young, it took place a year after I graduated high school, but I have to wonder how it affected people going forward, because it really was a groundbreaking movie in a lot of ways. So in terms of class distinction and treating people just based on the way they look or whatever. So
it's one of the first real movies that actually looked at people through, I mean, as a high school kid, you always look at certain people like, oh, they've got it made, they do it, and to find out these people have just as much pressure on them.
Right.
And this was also back during a generation where parents weren't, the most supportive of their kids. They were more supportive of what they wanted their kids to do.
Yeah.
It's like, we've heard plenty of stories now. It's like, the only reason I went into this was because, my dad really wanted me to be a doctor. Or my dad really wanted me to play football. My mom really wanted me to do this. It's like, and I mean, I've never understood that, because my parents, despite their faults, were always very supportive of me being just a little weirdo.
Not every parent's that way, though.
Right. I mean, I could have been one of those kids in the Goonies that was gone for like 2 days, during the weekend, and it's like I come home Sunday night and I'm beaten and bloodied and I might have a cast on, and they're like, "So what'd you do this weekend?" "Nothing." "Okay."
Yeah, that's we didn't have helicopter parents in our day. It's like basically they wanted you gone until dinner time, and then maybe at that point.
Well, as we used to, there was actually a movie in the 80s called "I Lived the Dog's Life."
Right.
And it was the young man who made a little documentary of his own life, who basically went outside to play with the dogs early, ran around the farm all day long, and at night when the dogs came in to be fed, he came in.
Okay.
It was just kind of a little weird thing.
It's an enjoyable life.
But just it just was a different, it was, as we love to say, every 10 years, it's a different world.
Yeah. Except for the fact that, really, genuinely, it isn't. We like to think that we're progressing and evolving as a society, but we've still got those same things. We've got kids who, their parents aren't around, so they are out there. They're just not as, I guess the right word is free. It's like they're not as carefree.
Well, family drama and trauma is
generational
perpetual.
trauma.
That's every opera. That's every Shakespeare play, and I'll even throw in a Shakespearean effort at a movie. How about The Lost Boys?
We're not talking about The Lost Boys.
It's an '80s movie, baby. It's an '80s movie,
and it really does. It really does hit all those same things. Just their vampires explode.
Okay, but hold on. You teed it up perfect. I can't believe I'm shocked that Brandon didn't bring this up. If we're talking about intergenerational interactions, how do you not bring up Back to the Future? I mean, you get to see your parents as teenagers, and that was a groundbreaking movie. It's full of plot holes once again, but do you like that movie, Alyssa?
I thought it was okay. I liked it. Sorry.
It was groundbreaking when it came out in terms of its emotional
I'm just
stuff.
going to make a quick comment about plot holes, and we're going to pretend it never happened until I have to do an entire episode about it in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Plot holes didn't matter back then.
Oh, you didn't care.
Well,
People just enjoyed the film.
We were an imaginative generation. We understood Scott McCloud's read between the panels thing when it came to understanding comics.
Right.
That this panel didn't necessarily go directly into this panel. We could make in our own brains, we could come up with why that happened or why this happened or why, 1 minute Marty's here. Oh, how did he get across town so quickly to, dress up like in a hazmat suit?
It doesn't matter.
It didn't matter because we could connect those dots. Because of the way media is force-fed to people nowadays, if this doesn't immediately follow the entire round, I mean, if there's no montage to show you what this guy did to get to this point, today's audiences don't catch that.
Right.
And that's why so many of them won't latch onto these 80s movies.
Yeah, would Stand By Me.
Oh, what a great movie.
Such a good movie.
I mean, you talk about one that let you fill in the blanks, that let you be an intelligent audience and follow some children off on, admittedly, a horrifying adventure. But how many 12-year-old boys would not have gone on that adventure?
Dude, if my friend came to me and we were sitting there counting pennies and he's like, hey, do you want to see a dead body? It's like, yes, all day long, yes.
Stand By Me. Stand By Me is almost a perfect movie, and there was many perfect movies from the 80s, and we're going to talk about some of them when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Those guys are dorks.
Yes, but they're my dorks.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Alan Gilbreth and Alyssa Diggs and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And we are hot and heavy in the middle of a brilliant discussion all about the 1980s movies, why they endure, what was special about them. And it wasn't just all, it wasn't just all goofy movies and funny movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There were movies, I will tell you this, Alyssa, these movies influenced some of my life choices. They genuinely changed the way I live. I'm just going to tell you real quick what they are. I got a homework assignment for you. Obviously, The Dead Poets Society is one of my, it is my favorite movie of all time. Dances with Wolves made a huge impact on me. But a movie that really changed my life, and it's not as well known, is The Razor's Edge with Bill Murray. Mm-hmm. What a great... If you get a chance, Alyssa, you should watch that movie.
And it's also a book.
And it's also a book, and it is outstanding. But actually, Ferris Bueller's Day Off also influenced my life. But some of these movies hold up. They are really solid. These three. But there were some really noteworthy movies. I mean, I know we love The Dead Poets Society, but go ahead, Alan. But
one of my favorite lesser movies of the 80s, and I'm going to look directly at Brandon when I say this, because I'm going to say Clue.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
You got to derail
the...
Okay.
Yes.
No.
Tim Curry.
It was a tour de force of a very popular game with a lot of very popular 80s actors.
And it's funny you bring that up. We lost Martin Mull this week.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I wanted to bring that up. We did lose a great one. Because can I keep in mind at the same time, we also got the original Batman movie, we got Scarface, and we got Beverly Hills Cop.
You know what?
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop does not hold up. I hate to say it. I watched it a while ago. The pacing is lousy. It's not that great, actually.
Well, that's the thing, though, is more people are used to the more comedic spin that Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3 had. They don't realize just how gritty. Nobody remembers how gritty the first one is. Well, it's a full-on crime movie. It's not an
It's not funny.
comedic. Yeah.
And I feel like we'd all be very highly remiss if we didn't mention the fact of Top Gun.
Oh yeah.
Top Gun's another one that it doesn't hold up in terms of you're laughing at the beach scene where they're playing volleyball and all this other stuff, but
you might.
But it's still but I mean it's still a great movie. Like you want to watch it. But.
And then another thing I was thinking of too, in terms of the level of like ones that are a little bit more dark and that change you, is how about Rain Man?
Rain Man. Okay, so
1988.
Rain Man, Dead Poet Society, Razor's Edge, Dances with Wolves. I would almost call these perfect movies. You immerse yourself. I don't know. They're very well made. They're very well written, well acted, and they hold up. Those are and they still capture the spirit of the 80s. But
Okay, Max, these two are for you. You ready?
Fire.
Landscape changing movies. We got Akira.
Yes, I've seen that.
We got Akira. Oh, look, he just pumped right up. And again, Heavy Metal is an 80s movie.
Never saw Heavy Metal.
That is a landscape-changing cartoon.
In what way? I know I've seen it, but are you talking about because of the rotoscope
Looks like He-Man.
thing?
Headbangers
I couldn't tell you
Leather.
one thing about that movie.
It was the Headbangers Ball of
So
cartoons,
here's-
and it had every major voice actor that they could have that later we're going to see on TV.
And for the voices they didn't have somebody specific for, they just grabbed all the guys from SCTV and throw them in a booth. Heavy Metal was a revolution.
You'd never seen anything like that before.
Right. It was not something. First of all, it was an animated feature-length anthology for adults. And when I say for adults, I mean like it would get an NC-17 nowadays, if not an X.
Oh,
it's very violent. There's a lot of sexual content in it. And there's a lot of drug use.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where someone said, you know what? They've got this ceiling on animated films. They're all supposed to be for kids. Not here, in here in America, but they do it everywhere else. We're going to do it here now.
We touched on this a little last week, and I'm just going to reiterate again now because I'm sitting there I'm listening to everything you guys listed. I'm looking at my list, and not one of them is a franchise or a sequel. These were one-off movies, and those are always my favorite. Was apart from Star Wars, you know,
or Maverick.
Yeah, but all of those were basically a 30-year sequel.
A 30-year sequel
that doesn't
count as a franchise.
These are just one-off movies. They came and went.
And how about the almost completely perfect movie ever made?
Yeah.
It will stop you in your tracks every time it's on TV.
Okay.
And you will still watch it. Princess Bride.
That's true.
Oh, that is an 80s.
That's an
about that
80s
movie the
movie,
other day.
children.
Another
Labyrinth
perfect movie.
And Princess Bride.
I was just talking to some friends about that because I loved The Princess Bride when I was growing up because my family loved it. And I had to make my dad, he would have to come in every time I watched it and fast forward through the eels and the rat scene.
Oh.
He'd have to pick me
Those
up
rats are
and face
pretty,
me away from the TV and fast forward.
My
Right.
nostalgia for The Princess Bride's a little weird because I am Inigo Montoya is kind of my spirit animal because of the fact that I watched it back when I was in high school and I was doing fencing back in high school. So it's like, ooh, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
There's a really good interview with Mandy Patinkin about him filming on Princess Bride, that final fight scene between him and the six-fingered man.
Yeah.
If you, I'll find it, Max, and I'll send it to you, and then I'll post it on our page for anybody who hasn't seen it before. To watch him, his emotions about filming that scene, and how that is one of the greatest moments in his acting career.
He learned a sword fight,
Right.
too.
You
I
know,
mean, those guys, you talk about full commit. They really did the sword fight. The dialogue's brilliant. The directing, everything in that movie is awesome.
Back in the day with like practical effects, even going back to Joe, the fact of, the 80s again, in your land of Chicago, the Blues Brothers, the fact that they actually piled up cars, they tossed a car from a crane.
Another that kicked off the 80s, 1980, but yeah.
Carrie Fisher with an assault rifle.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
An actual explosion from an RPG.
Yeah.
Let's see. Huge cultural shock movie.
Are you going to hit me with a Christmas Story?
No, I'm going to say The Blue Lagoon.
Oh, yeah, that's...
It doesn't hold up, but at its moment, that was the Brooke Shields bombshell that totally changed the genre. Or how about Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Okay, yeah.
We had Disney and Warner's coming together for one feature.
You can't top Princess Bride though, but
nope.
you got we love the 80s, but we got to get out of here, you guys. The show's over. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Alan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
I'm Alyssa Diggs.
And I'm Brandon Olmstead, reaching out to Tool Talk listener Michelle. $500 for a picture of Max.